Hi.
Hello, Kino. How are you today?
Okay, and yourself?
I'm wonderful.
I love it when the guests come on just like fully
Mhm.
smiling, so much positivity from the word go. So,
Yeah,
how's your
what
morning so far?
it's been good, productive. How about your day?
Yeah, it's been quite relaxed. So, it's a public holiday in South Africa at the moment. So, it's been a long
Oh,
weekend. Yeah. And for me, it was a really long weekend. Was I got an events company, so we had a wedding on Saturday, and that's been on your feet for like over 12 hours. And then I also got
mhm.
my own independent record label, and we had studio on Sunday, which was yesterday. So it was like 3 hours sleep, get up, you know, into production side of stuff. So that was like the whole day. So today I was like, no, let me just relax around. I actually woke up at 2 p.m. and that doesn't happen a lot. That
Wow.
really doesn't happen a lot. Yeah.
So are you a
But
coffee or a tea person when you need to wake up?
it depends. I try to avoid caffeine as much as
Oh,
possible. Like tea, I don't mind, once in a while.
mhm.
But if I really need it, yeah, I will have like a cup of coffee. But I just try to get into like a natural flow, organic energy,
Oh,
you know. Yeah. What about you? You seem like a
better
coffee
than me.
person.
Coffee and tea. But yeah, I do coffee in the morning and then mint tea in the afternoon. So I've got my cup of mint
Okay.
tea, or herbal, or sometimes I do like turmeric or ginger. I love rooibos, from South Africa, from
Yeah,
over in
yeah,
your
yeah.
area. So yeah,
Yeah. So where about are you?
I'm in Ohio, so that's sort of like in the middle of the United States for your viewers who might not know interior geography of the U.S. And I'm in a city called Cincinnati. We're right on a river, the Ohio River, and yeah, we're an old city, so not a new city, not new construction. It's an old industrial town.
Okay. Thanks for letting us know. So I'm curious, what does CC stand for?
So Cece is my pen name, but
Okay.
so it's just kind of what I want my grandkids to call me, Cece. But you know, I don't have grandkids yet, and I don't know if you have kids, but grandkids kind of they decide what they want to call you. So I think I'm just going to have to be okay with that. But yeah, I would love for my grandkids to
Yeah.
call me Cece.
CC. Oh, that is quite
Yeah,
cool. Just CC. Nothing
yeah,
more, nothing less.
nothing more, nothing less.
But thanks for
Plus,
coming
it's a
on.
yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, no. Oh, you were saying plus?
Oh, it's also a young adult dystopian thing to use your initials.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say it's something new. So whenever someone comes on with the
Mhm.
initials, I'm like, okay, I wonder what that could mean. But thanks for explaining that to us.
You're
So I
welcome.
appreciate you being here. Thanks for taking the time. Um, this is going to be quite an exciting conversation. No offense to all other guests that have come onto the show. Everyone is quite exciting. So let's
Mhm.
start off first with you, your life, all the way up to like medical doctor serving in post Civil War
Mhm.
countries. Like, where did it all start for you, like you personally, before we get into your artistic career?
Absolutely. So in high school, this might amuse you. I wanted to be an ambassador. Like that was my highest and best calling, was to be an ambassador. And then I talked to a few people in service of the State Department, and they were miserable. And so I pivoted to economics and went into banking of all things. So I was a middle market lender in Chicago, and it just wasn't for me. A lot of people are great at it and they spend their entire careers serving businesses like that, and it just wasn't my jam. But while I was a banker, I did a lot of work in a very underprivileged neighborhood of Chicago, and helped in a medical clinic and in an after school tutoring program. And I just thought, it's not right that not everyone has access to healthcare, and so I went into medical school and to get my master's in public health, and I went to Vanderbilt University in Nashville, which is a great university, and was one of their first dual MD, MPH program candidates. And then after medical school, you have a choice: go to residency or start a nonprofit and work in other nations. And there was a lot of need in the early 2000s. And so I just said, you know what, I don't want to practice clinically. It's never been what I wanted to do. But I wanted to open clinics. And instead of just opening clinics in challenging areas in the United States, I just upped it a notch and went to post-Civil War situations. So our first clinic was in Afghanistan, and unfortunately, we had to pull that only about 6 months after we took it over, pulled the staff out and shut the clinic down because of the resurgence of the Taliban, which broke my heart. And I hated it, but it's better than people die. And then after that, we went to Colombia and served in the far northern reaches, or the far mountainous reaches where the Civil War was the thickest, and started a clinic in a little town called Fusagasugá. And they went and started another one in Ibagué, and just lots of fun there. And eventually that nation recovered from their civil war, and our services were no longer needed. And about 2002, we started work in Sierra Leone and worked there for 10 years following their civil war. And that was probably our longest running work, and the most time we spent was in Sierra Leone. We sent teams probably every 3 months, teams of doctors and nurses and dentists and really anyone who would come. If you could open your mouth and say hi, we would take you. And so we did that and served the people of Sierra Leone, helped them start 2 medical clinics, which then served over 600 villages. And it's funny because every time we brought a team in, we double the number of doctors in the nation up to a certain point, and then their health system started recovering and people started coming back. But it was just a joy and a privilege to work with people who seemed like their world had ended. You think about the apocalypse and you think, we'll never survive. I'd rather not survive. Well, these people had survived their version of the apocalypse with the Civil War and, family against family, neighbor against neighbor, massacres of entire villages, just obscene and horrific things happen in that nation. And yet when the Civil War ended, the people laid down not only the guns in their hands, but the guns in their hearts, and were really intent on reconciliation. And it was a journey. It's never easy to forgive someone who's killed your family, but I've seen it happen. And it was just a privilege and an honor to work with them in and through that whole season. And so yeah, that's how I got to working in post-Civil War nations, and it was a wonderful experience.
It's crazy how when we're in school and we're young and we're growing up, we have this intention to be, in your case, an ambassador or an attorney or a doctor. And then we find our true calling and lead us down the road of being a humanitarian. You are an everyday hero,
Oh,
Follow
I
your
don't feel
heart.
like an everyday hero. Yeah, but I feel like I worked with the true heroes, though, because I would come and go. I didn't stay there. I didn't live there. I just came and went. But the people I served were the real heroes, because they're the ones that changed their nation.
Yeah, but I mean, if it wasn't for individuals such as yourself that gave them that medical support and guidance, where would they be today? They'll probably still be chaotic, anyway. So from your personal experience, what is the trigger for civil war in society? Why do we end up in that situation?
I think we end up in our silos, and it's almost like we're in an echo chamber where we can't hear the other person, can't hear the other side, and we can't even consider that they might be partially right. Like, even if they're just a little bit right, then we need to be talking. And I see this happening in many places around the world. You experienced it in South Africa when people just would not entertain a viewpoint other than their own. And I think that is the division in society that concerns me the most, is not being able to disagree without becoming disagreeable. If we can disagree and still be civil about it, then we won't tip into civil war. It's when we cannot disagree without it becoming a violent issue or rage issue that we're headed to civil war. And I see that in my own nation right now. Very concerned about my own nation.
Yeah, no, it's still happening. It's all around the world. We're so driven by our emotions than just sitting down and pragmatic thinking. Like, what am I really disputing? Like, what am I really fighting about? Like, what is the point of it all? Like, is it really going to matter in 5 years? Should I be listening to this certain politician or political party, as you said, in South Africa? It's chaotic. People, even though we can still be civilized and respectful, there's still so much chaos that's happening in certain communities because of different opinions. And those opinions are driven because we believe in this party's ideologies or that person's ideologies.
Yeah.
But we don't even fully understand it, like how just to be a full human in society. So
yeah, and sometimes it takes. Oh, go on.
Oh, no, sorry. No.
I said sometimes it takes someone in the middle, a man or a woman of peace, a moderator, to bring two sides together. Say, okay, no, you might be right in part of it. You might be right in part of it, but we need to talk, and we can come to a compromise.
Yeah.
We can come to a middle ground. But if either side isn't willing to do that, how can there be any compromise? How can there be any agreement?
Yeah. How would you say we bring the two sides together? What would work?
Well,
what has worked?
There has to be a willingness for both sides, right? There has to be a recognition that if we don't come together, we're going to ruin everything. And maybe, we're not quite in that ditch as a nation yet. We haven't quite realized, we've run the cart off the road and we're going to wreck if we don't do something. And so there has to be a willingness, but then there has to be someone or a group of someones who can be that mediator, be impartial. And sometimes that takes someone outside of the situation. I think back to Sierra Leone, and there were international parties that came in and negotiated the peace and brought it was a 30-year civil war to a conclusion. So, but it took someone from the outside intervening. And I think a lot of times that's what it takes, is someone who's not interested, who doesn't have a personal aspect to gain anything. They don't have their stake in it. They're not going to gain anything from either side getting their agenda. And yet they can see both sides and bring them together. And that's a tough place to be. And I don't think there are a lot of people and or organizations in the world that could really say that they're an uninterested party and can serve that role.
Yeah. You said 30 years. 30 whole years.
That's a long civil war. Yep.
Like 30 years,
Yes.
I'm going to emphasize it again. That's
the devastation. Yes. So the first time I was in Sierra Leone, we brought a team with 8 medical doctors on it. There were 5 medical doctors in the nation when we entered. Just 5 doctors for 5 million people. That's 1 million people per doctor. I just want to say that level of devastation is incomprehensible to us in the United States. I probably have 5 medical doctors down the street from me in a practice. Like I can probably walk to 5 medical doctors. Whereas in this nation, you couldn't walk and have any medical help or professional. And so the child and infant mortality was through the roof. Maternal mortality through the worst in the world when we started. It's gotten a little bit better, but there's still so much improvement left to go. But we would drive on these roads, the main road between 2 big cities, and there would be holes the size of Volkswagens. And we would have to drive into the bush. And okay, this is not like manicured grass like many of our listeners might think of when they think of, oh, let's go in off the road. No, this is bush. This is like, trees and bushes and plants and shrubs and weeds and mess and a lot of things. And you might even find another hole there. So like getting stuck, you got stuck all the time. It was normal. Like you just figured it out. And the level of devastation, the level of destruction and displacement in these people's lives was, I've never seen anything like that. And I hope I never do again.
And what do the powers of these communities and countries do? Like, where are they?
I mean, in a civil war that long, a lot of the influential people, if they could get out, they got out. They left.
So they just abandoned. They abandoned
or one side or another would kidnap and just kill, execute. Like that was normal. War atrocities were normal. Yeah, normal.
Wow. I would actually love to invite you onto another podcast down the line, which is called Creating Team Human. So we launched this podcast in November last year. I launched it with an author who's based in Canada, Don Sawyer. And, in our conversation, we touched on so many topics that wasn't even related to his work. Like we got to that at the end. And then a few days later, he sends me an email. He's like, we need to bring our ideas together and let's create a global panel, humanitarians and heroes to come on to the show so we can discuss how to bring more unity, globally, not just in the country, but globally. That it doesn't matter where you're from. It doesn't matter what your religion is or what your cultural beliefs are. At the end of the day, let's be one. And if we stick together as one and we work together as one, we can build up economies, together. So, I mean, I would love to bring you on to that show, to meet Don Sawyer and share your views, of what you've experienced, because, bringing someone with your experience on board who's dealt in post-Civil War nations, that's going to our mandate with the show. It's been a very rough road getting the show going, but it's like what Don says. It's an ambitious goal, a really ambitious goal. You're going up against so much today. You're going up against mainstream media, which is why we are so grateful for podcasts. That is decentralized. So that's our tool that we're using. And I mean, our first panel, we had a lady who came in. She's in the middle of what's going on in Gaza. She came in and shared what's happening there and her experience there, being on the ground. We've had people coming in from a global suicide point of view. We've had different people. We've had people who've come in from Central Africa as well recently. That's in episode 2. Yeah, I would love to send you, the full details about that, and you could give us your thoughts, and we can set up a date, because that's what's going to help us.
Absolutely.
I love having conversations with us. Thank you for sharing that. So I was going to say earlier on, I am going to assume that based on the experience, okay, before I get there, like medical care, like what you said about medical care, It's still not. In 2025, there's still millions of people that are still living without medical care. It's still an issue,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this big question mark about what are we doing about it, you know, which
Mm-hmm.
literally goes back to creating team. It's the question we keep asking, like, what are we doing about it? So we can't keep depending on the government to do something about it or our neighbor to do something about it. We have to do something about it. And what you said, like the willingness to actually come to the table, have the talk, have the discussion, and let's sort the issue out ourselves together. So
Absolutely.
it's still an issue.
It is still an issue.
Yeah.
Yes. There's entirely too many people who, can't access medical care. And if they can, it's prohibitively expensive. So, yeah, it is still an issue. And unfortunately, government is not necessarily the one that's going to solve it, especially in some countries. Some countries, the government can't even provide water or electricity. So you think they're going to do medical care? Because I don't. I just think there's a lot of challenges. And it is a complex problem because I would say most of all, it depends on locality more than anything. Because one person in a town or a village can go get training, and are they going to come back? That's the big question. Typically, there's such a demand for medical staff. I mean, nurses alone, there's a worldwide shortage of nurses. Even in America, like we import nurses from the Philippines, which is crazy to me. But yet, I bet if you go back to the Philippines, they're probably short on nurses too. So why does an individual then choose to emigrate or move somewhere else or stay where they trained instead of going back? And that's up to an individual. That's their human right in a way. That's their free will. But yet, how can a town or a village solve that problem for themselves? It's complex. It's complex. I will admit that.
Yeah.
It's selfishness
versus selfless,
Well, and I think they have to have a vision for it, right? So the person we worked with in Sierra Leone, he was trained as a physician's assistant, which in Africa, that's practically a doctor. And he was trained outside of Sierra Leone, but he chose to come back because he had a burden to help his people. He felt called to help his people. That's a vision. And when you have a vision for your life, it doesn't matter what, who comes in front of you and waves a bunch of dollars. If you have a vision, you're going to follow that vision because that's your own conviction. And you can't make someone do that. If I said, okay, you're going to be trained and you have to go here, like that might not actually be the best solution, because is that person going to provide great care if they're resentful of being there? So it is complicated.
Yeah, that's it. It does take a lot. On Creating Team Human, the second episode, we spoke to a humanitarian who's based in Central Africa. And I mean, this is a guy who's been well educated. Okay. He was given the opportunity to go study in Switzerland. He took it, he went, he did his studies, and he came back to his country. And when we brought up the question, why did you come back? It's because, look, he knew that his country was short of so much. It's struggling, it's battling. The country needs people like him. When he actually came back, he could have chosen not to. He could have stayed in Europe. He could have gone anywhere after that. I mean, in those days, early 2000s, accessibility into different countries was easy, versus 2025. But he didn't, he came back, and now he's, doing what he can to uplift, people in his country, and, coming onto platforms, digital platforms such as the podcast itself now to push, what he's doing out there to the world and what other countries can learn from it. So it does take a lot. There's people such as yourself, probably felt something deeper that, look, I want this life to be fulfilling and I want to live it on purpose. I'm going to do ABC in the medical field. thank you. I want to say
Mhm.
personally, thank you for doing that for humanity. And then it's people who are like, no, why should I? I'm going to put myself first. I'm going to look after
Mhm.
myself. I'm going to chase the dollars. That's what it comes
I
down
think
to.
I think left to myself, I probably would have stayed in the U.S., but I really felt a calling from God, and so I can't ignore the impact of my own faith in this. And I think,
Yeah.
People of faith can relate to that. Like any faith, you just feel a conviction in your heart. You got to do it. And, and I know that, that didn't come from me. That came from God. And so that, when you answer that call, there's a fulfillment that's beyond your selfish fulfillment. Right. Um, and so I
Yeah.
think it
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
it helps to have people of faith involved in any endeavor. But yeah, even without faith, you can feel that call and that vision.
The chosen ones. That's what we call them. The
I
chosen
don't know if I'm
ones.
chosen. I'm just,
I'm
I don't know why. I don't
sure
know why
because
he
I mean,
chose me. I don't know why I got chosen. That's all I gotta say. Sometimes I'm like, I don't get it. Why me, God? I don't get it.
I've evaluated for myself that we will never really know why. We can keep asking the question, but we will never really know why.
Nope.
I faced similar experiences, in my life, which look, I'm not going to get into, but I mean, it's led to, having this podcast. I mean, I went out on this mandate because I saw what's happening in the creative space and how, young, talented, ambitious creators were giving up on themselves because, it was mainstream first them and they weren't getting the
Mhm.
opportunities. And then there was lack of resources to
Mhm.
having sufficient internet, data, a laptop, a PC. I mean,
Mhm.
2025 education, it's free, it's online, but they don't have
Mhm.
access to all of.
Yeah.
So, I just went out on this mandate to say, okay, I am going to go up against mainstream and I am going to create an independent space,
Mhm.
for creative forms to, join me. And then wherever you fall in short, I'm going to assist you with that, And that's what I spent the last 4 years doing
Mhm.
as I was educating myself, networking. I started to bring these individuals
Mhm.
into my circle, and wherever they were stuck in their career, boom, they would get that solved without spending loads of money,
Mhm.
without signing their lives away to a record label or a publishing company. They were becoming
Mhm.
entrepreneurs. They were learning how to become entrepreneurs, how to manage their career. And it's guests such as yourself that comes onto the podcast, and just by
Mhm.
them listening to your journey, that motivates them. You know,
Mhm.
so
Yeah, I think
but
it
we'll never
definitely
know
takes a
why.
community. You're right. It takes a
Yeah,
community working together. And I don't know about anyone else, but I don't really pay much attention to mainstream media at all.
yeah,
I don't watch the
yeah.
news. I don't because I just I can't stomach the bias from all of them. I just shut it all off. And so I look a lot of times to indie creators, and some of my favorite musicians are indies. Like they're not like these big names. Some of them have become big
Yeah,
names because they're so good, but I think it's wonderful what you're doing, giving people a platform who don't have a platform.
yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
So no, but yeah, but once again, thank you to you, for coming on because by doing that, it helps, this mandate. It
Yes.
helps. It does. Yeah. So I'm going to assume now. I said that word like 3 times now, because each time I went back. I'm going to assume based on your experience that has led to the books you have written. Is there a
Yes.
dotted line between fiction and nonfiction?
So there is. We stopped our work in Sierra Leone in 2012. We felt like, okay, they got it. It was never our intention for us to own that, right? We were coming alongside a local partner as partners. And it got to the point where they loved us being part of it, but we didn't, they had everything they needed. And so I was like, okay, what next? And I took some time off, wrote a devotional about community development, not published yet. Long story. Not going to get into that. And in 2012, right after Trayvon Martin was murdered, I had this all-night dream where I saw the United States go through a civil war over racial issues. You know, clan against clan, tribe against tribe. It just broke my heart, and it just kept going. This dream just kept going. I can still see like the fires and everything in my brain. And then like it was like a fast forward or a skip ahead, like 45 years. And I saw teenagers growing up locked behind these walls in their areas where they only knew their own ethnicity. So Hispanics with Hispanics, Black Americans with Black Americans, Asian Americans with Asian Americans, white Americans with white Americans. And there were 4 teenagers who were crying out for freedom. And I met them. They introduced themselves to me. How do I come up with character names? They just show up in my dreams. So that's when I met Marcos, Rose, Harriet, and Jason. And I was blown away. I woke up and I realized I need to write this story. And so I started the journey. I had never, well, I'll take that back. I'd been writing my whole life. And I would write poetry and short fiction stuff and a lot of technical writing in both banking and medicine and in public health stuff, a lot of technical writing. And then I wrote the Bible study devotional. But I'd never really written fiction for publication. There's difference. Like, you know, you're going to write a short story and it just kind of stays in your drawer. That wasn't what I felt God calling me to in this. I knew that I had to write this story and I needed to get it out, and I needed it to be received in a way that it would change people's trajectory. And so I picked the genre young adult dystopian very intentionally. One, it fit what the dream fit young adult dystopian, and maybe, you know, in the prequel section, post-apocalyptic. But I knew that I had to tell this story. And so I started writing, and my first drafts were terrible. Like, burn them. I never want to see them again, kind of things. I have one copy, and that's all. And we're not going to discuss it. And no one shall ever see it. It will get buried somewhere.
It's in the vault.
And it's not coming out either. Not coming out. And worked with an editor, realized a lot of my holes, and then rewrote and rewrote and rewrote. 5 drafts later, I worked with my current developmental editor, and we split the whole series into 4 books, which makes sense since I have 4 protagonists. And so each of them gets a chance to star in their book and to move the plot forward. I felt like that was a very important thing. And I initially pursued traditional publishing, and then I went to a conference and talked with a lot of traditionally published authors who were frustrated they had to do their own marketing. And then I asked myself, like, why am I only getting 15% royalties if that, and have to do all my own marketing? No, let's just do this. I've run my own business for years. Like, I started a nonprofit and ran it. We moved up to Cincinnati to plant a church. I ran the church, like, as executive. So, like, I can run a business. I'm not afraid of it. Like, give me anything, I will learn how to do it. Jack of all trades right here, or Jill of all trades, I should say. And so I just said, I'm just going to go self-publishing. And that's all she wrote. 2024 is when I started releasing the series. The first book I have right here, Upheaval. This is the post-apocalyptic prequel, sets up all the world. And that was January of last year. And this is Divided. So won a couple of awards. That was the first book in the series, main novel. Stars Marcos, and he's desperate to escape the city. He gets out, and then he gets caught. And he ends up in a labor camp. And then he decides, as you do when you're 18 years old, that the entire labor camp needs to be taken down. So he does it, which is a fun ride. And then this is the one I just released in January or February, Deception. This is basically takes us, one of the secondary characters goes to the underground, which is the rebel movement's headquarters in the Appalachian Mountains, and gets into a bit of trouble. So that's kind of fun. But yeah, so this is the the next book in the series is coming out in June. So.
And is there's one in between as well called Caged, correct?
Caged is coming out in June. Yeah, Divided
Caged is still coming
out. So I have 2 series going at the same time. I have the novella series, which are the little ones, and then the big ones are the main novels, and that's Divided, stars Marcos. Caged is Rose. Rose is our Asian physicist, and she gets herself in trouble. She challenges people too much and ends up getting kidnapped for what she's figured out. And while kidnapped, she finds out more, realizes that the entire underground and Queenstown, her city, are in jeopardy. And so she escapes and she has to stop the bad guys. So that's Caged, coming out in June. And then the next 2 will be next year.
I can see this series like actually going on for a very long time. I mean, there's so much to talk about or write about.
There is. And I didn't even say this, but the couple that stars in this, Moses and Julie, are in the main series. But I would love to write, this is only their little story. I would love to write the rest of that story, you know? And so have an entire trilogy of that beginning time in the Federated Republic of America, when everything is just kind of getting settled and the dictator is dictating and, you know, things are happening like that. And then there's that sandwich generation. So the kids' parents, or Moses and Julie's kids. So the sort of the in-between generation, if you will, the Gen X or the Gen X generation. Their entire story. So there's an entire story there. That would be another like couple books maybe. So yes, I could see it going on for a while.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I love how you've branched out all the individual characters as well. It's like a Marvel scenario going on here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, with that. So you mentioned that Divided has also accumulated many awards along the way. Do you want to mention what awards that was?
Yeah, so it's won
and why?
Yes. So it's Young Adult Dystopian. So that's a very unique space. So I can apply for Children's Book Awards as well. And I got one. It's called Moonbeam Children's Book Award. And generally speaking, it's all like picture books and middle grade, maybe early readers. And then they have this young adult section. And so you've got these cute little like illustrated, puppies and kittens and horses. And then you have Divided. So, but it won the second place silver award for ebook fiction. And then the Firebird International Book Awards for young adult fiction took the first place in that. And that's a fun program because typically you get charged for entry fees because they have to hire an editor or someone who knows what they're doing to read all these entries. And so you get charged a nominal fee. But the fee for Firebird goes to support a local women's shelter. And then the whole staff works and donates their services. So that's a really fun award that I found it to be a privilege to win.
Yeah. So, I mean, for creators out there, if someone approaches you, and they think, okay, you need to pay a fee to actually enter the awards, you shouldn't be skeptical about it.
Mm-hmm.
You should enter it because that's also leverage for your career.
You should be skeptical. So there's different sites that you can look at to verify that this is a legitimate award, right? So there are some that it is a thinly veiled marketing scheme. And if you look at enough award programs, you can scent that out. You can, that one doesn't smell right, or that's legit. And you look at the past awardees, read the past awardees. Are they, do you want to be on the same bookshelf as these? If you think about that, when you apply for an award, your book is going to be listed alongside other books. Do you want your book alongside those books? That'd be the question.
Yeah. Is it my pot to be in, or is it not? So no,
Because I don't
definitely,
apply for
definitely,
every
you
award
should
program,
check.
that's for sure.
No, you're 100% right. You need to do the correct checks to ensure that,
Mhm.
it is legit. Definitely. Maybe I should change my word from skeptical to don't be scared to look into it.
Don't be
Don't be
scared.
scared to
Get
look
it.
into it. Yeah,
That's it.
yeah. Don't be scared to look into it. Yeah. So I mean, every creative out there, whether you be an author, whether it be a musician, whether it be a painter, has a message, with their work. So when I read your book, when I listen to your track, I want to
Mhm.
walk away with something, or I want that person to walk away with something when they listen to my music, in my case.
Mhm.
So what's yours? What's your overall mandate for your work,
Mhm.
for your series? What's the end goal?
Overall, yes, the overall message is a message of hope and of courage and working together. We can
Nice.
face
Nice.
anything. We can face anything. Hold on to hope, face it with courage, and do so together.
Nice. No, nice.
Mhm.
And that's what we need, right? That's what we
Mhm.
need in the
Yeah.
world now more than ever. You know, um, but there was one podcast I was actually a guest on, and I I first ended up saying, that the world is chaotic. And then I corrected myself and I said, okay, wait, there's chaotic things that are happening, but the world is actually a beautiful place. We
It
just need
is.
to look at the beauty. We need to see the
Mhm.
beauty. We need to see past all the
Mhm.
darkness that's going on and look at what's good in the world.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because, going back to mainstream media, it's all about what's going wrong in the world. It's always
Mhm.
bad. And that's just how it's planned. It's built by design, to
Mhm.
keep you in a state of fear all
Mhm.
the time, 24/7, 365.
Mhm.
So you need to see above that, past that,
Mhm.
that there's much more beauty, there is more
Mhm.
positivity, there is much more opportunity in the world. We can overcome it all.
Mhm.
If you are lacking resources, we can overcome that. We just need to know where to look.
Mhm.
So I love that message that you're pushing out. Thank you for that. You know,
Well,
I
we
guess
have
on the
to
other end
counter
of
that
things, also,
negativity, you know.
yeah,
We
yeah, we have to. So since you like in
Mhm.
a series, I mean, your endings now, of course, now, without giving away too much, your endings sort of have to, does it always end like on a positive note, or does it now, to be continued?
Each book has a satisfying conclusion. How's that for a non-answer? But because it's a
Yeah, yeah,
series, there's still a thread, like, we're not quite there yet. Okay? Like, after
yeah,
Divided, there's a satisfying conclusion, but wow, what's gonna happen? Is the regime going to retaliate? And then after Caged, there's a satisfying conclusion, but that more is coming because we're not there yet. And the same after Betrayed, which is book 3. And then United has, again, the plot lines will be resolved. Everything will come together and make this beautiful picture. And it's a reasonably, I won't say happy ending because it's dystopian, but it's a satisfying
yes.
conclusion, if you get my point.
You're going to be satisfied with the conclusion. You're not going to
I
be left in
won't
the dark thinking what's next.
I won't make you throw the book because you're so mad at me.
So, living in this era of artificial intelligence and the power of
Mhm.
artificial intelligence, you see yourself fitting that into upcoming books as a threat to society?
Mm. Um, I there have been some ideas I've toyed with, but actually I have some friends who are probing into that space, and I'm going to let them do that. So not from a writing standpoint, and I don't incorporate generative AI into my writing. Um, However, I'm not opposed to using AI as an assistant in marketing, especially like transcriptions of podcasts, and then, oh, take this transcription and make a blog post. Like that that feels like
Yeah,
very reasonable to use, and that's a
yeah,
time save for me. I do work with a virtual assistant as well, and she's indispensable. She's actually the one helping me train the AI. So that's good. But yeah, I don't necessarily see myself delving into the AI as science fiction realm. I actually see a much maybe more ominous future after we get through this AI, and that's just thought control in general, and how messages are filtered and how they get to us. Because I think you go back to your mainstream media, negativity is clickbait, and as a result, like conflict is what generates ratings. And so you just wonder, like, are we being herded as a society into something, and or not, or are we just being negativity down a drain hole?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's something I've been pondering deeply.
Mm-hmm. I can see by the expression on your face. No, thank you for sharing. I share your same thoughts, with regards to artificial intelligence. It's a huge help, when it comes, using it as an assistant to help you with certain tasks where, 10 years ago, you needed to hire, a team of 10 people to actually get it done. Where, now as an independent creative, if you know how to use it and use it well, I'm not saying that, people out there should. It's like, people are losing jobs, at the moment because of artificial intelligence. So that sucks, in a way. But then again, people who are losing, work, they need to figure out themselves, okay, how can I utilize this technology that's taken me out of work, to benefit myself and to move on from it. I've also got a lot of creatives who are anxious about AI. Should I pursue my creative journey? Because now, someone can write a book in 5 minutes using AI, just to monetize it. They upload it on Amazon. And, why should I spend now the next 3-6 months or a year, so now, I have to be like, okay, you just need to follow your heart. You need to push out your best work, and whatever happens. At the end of the day is you are going to go and be telling an organic story, and you need to find your audience that's going to be, or that's going to relate to your story. And they're there somewhere, 7 billion people in the world. You need to just look for them and build your community around them, AI or no AI. So, yeah.
So I think, I want to circle back to something, because there's this thought a lot of people have in the author community that, oh, these people are going to create books and upload them to Amazon. And one, Amazon's getting smarter. So there's that. And two, those books are trash. And it very quickly reveals itself to be not well written. AI will never match a human in the emotional intelligence and in the relational aspects. And even a well-trained AI, there's still going to be a shortfall. If we ever get to the place where AI can feel emotions, well, we got a lot more to worry about than Amazon KDP getting taken over by AI. Then we got to okay, that might be our AI post-apocalyptic situation. Is AI going to take over the world? So I don't think we're in a place where AI is going to get there and replace people creating. You can always tell. That's the thing. And so I don't think a creator needs to worry about it. Just create your heart and your art with your vision and your passion, and tell people about it. Are you going to have to learn a lot? Yeah. Are you going to have to market and talk to people about your work? Yes. But in the long run, I think we as humanity are better for you making the effort. And then other thing is people getting displaced by AI. My question to them is, what creative endeavor are you going to do? Because the last time this happened was the Industrial Revolution. And, machines are going to ruin us. Well, no, they didn't. We grew. So what's the new industry coming? I don't know. I can't answer that. But there are really smart people who I'm sure are going to come out and we're going to be like, wow, it's going to be like Steve Jobs in his garage. It's going to be this man or woman who got fired or displaced because of AI. And now they're doing the whole big next thing, whatever that is, that's going to change our world. This is how we advance as a human race, is that people are taken out of their comfort zone and then they invent, they create.
Yeah. I mean, going back, as you said, let's look at when the internet blew up. Okay. So I was a kid at the time, you couldn't actually, create opportunities for yourself. You don't know what it was. You didn't understand it. You were just starting to use it. So now we are in this global change. You mentioned the Industrial Revolution. My honest opinion, this is now the fourth Industrial Revolution that's taking place.
Yes.
It's coming in. So you shouldn't be like sitting back, relax, and just taking it like, for granted, like whatever, and be like, oh no, I got nothing to do and whatever, maybe going through your head. You need to learn, how can I embrace this and use it, and what can I create out of it? Because now is that time. So in that time, what can I do with it? Like I can't go back and be like, okay, when the internet started to blow up, I couldn't do anything about it yet. But now what can I do now with this, new era of technology? And that's, for me, is the correct mindset to have. But we can only wait and see what is next. Space that's going to continue to grow. Some people may be scared, some people may be excited. But I'm one of those who is excited, about what's to come, living through this, it's crazy.
It is wild.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of empathy for people who have been displaced, either by AI or like in our nation government trimmings. I have a lot of empathy for people going through that. But it always comes back to, don't let this define you. Let this be your launching point for the new, whatever it's going to be, whether you're going to retrain or God has this great new thing for you to do.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. CC, our everyday hero. Where can we find you online?
So always at ccrobinsonauthor.com, but I have a special offer for your listeners, and that is a free ebook copy of Upheaval. So if they sign up for my newsletter I'll give you the link at ccrobinsonauthor.com/Kino Isaac, then they will get that for free. And I'm also on all the socials as CC Robinson Author.
Thank you so much for that. Is that link already active?
It is not yet. So I understand that this podcast goes up a week after we record. So that will be active today, and I will send you the link in email.
Okay. Yeah. No, it normally does go up like a week after. So prior to this weekend, I was traveling for 3 weeks and I was doing podcasts in between, but then there were connectivity issues. So the guests that I actually had for last week, I had to move to this Wednesday. So I've got you now today. So I'm hoping to get your episode out this Wednesday, just so I could
I'll get it.
Catch up. But yeah, let's see what happens. But thank you so much for that. Thank you
You're
so
welcome.
much for that. Yeah. And all the best with the next projects that's, up for you.
Thank
And
you.
all the other work that you're doing. I appreciate you. And I'm sure the listeners also, going to appreciate you. Thank you for your contribution to humanity, and all the best with all your creative work going forward.
All the best to you too, Kino. Thank you so much for having me on.
Okay. Thank you, Cici. Okay. Bye.
Bye.